welcome back everyone for week three. This week we're going to be going through content planning, productivity, and tools. Now, we had a look at some tools last week, and that was largely around when you're looking at actually creating content. I'm going to reflect on those tools slightly because some of them overlap with the actual content planning side of things and your productivity side of things. But for the most part, we'll be looking at tools this time that actually help you plan, produce, and also kind of look at your metrics afterwards so you can start monitoring the progress of your work. So, as I mentioned in week one, and most likely mentioned in week two as well, is that the key to success on Instagram really is to create a plan and stick to it with as much consistency as possible. So, if you're going to post twice a week, you're going to post twice a week. If you plan on doing more than that, or if you plan on doing a post every single day, just try to balance that with yourself in terms of how much content you can feasibly put out with your resources. If something came up and it's going to eat your time for 2 or 3 weeks, is it easier for you to distribute what you would have thought of doing across 1 week, across your entire month? Things like that you really need to think about, because that consistency is key. I delivered this presentation before and someone commented at the end saying that that makes a lot of sense because he likened it to the gym. It's better to go twice a week and do 30 minutes than it is to sporadically do it once every few months, as equally as it can drain you entirely trying to do it every single day. You know, it's like that January mentality where you jump into it and think, this is my year to be absolutely ripped, and it just February comes along and things go out the window. So it's that mentality that you just have to stick with, and just make it as the more realistic you make it for yourself, the more you'll actually get from the platform over time. So here's some of the tools of the trade that I mentioned last week: Canva, Placeit, Unsplash. All of these can really help you get your content together, really help you with your imagery, your image content, your static imagery. I've placed these in here again as to allow you to kind of reflect back on that content creation side of things. Canva will also allow you to do some productivity, and I'll show you those as well. Same with the video content. Again, this is a huge part of your planning and productivity as well, because the more familiar you get with these platforms, the easier it becomes. I mean, for when it comes to these are like the ones that I use day in, day out. I use Canva every single day. I use Placeit.net all the time. The more practice you get with these, the quicker you'll become in terms of like your actual productivity to be able to deliver content, because it's half the battle to have an idea. It's the second half of the battle to actually create it. And then the third half is actually staying consistent with it as well. So again, just reflect back on your colors and branding and themes. If you're going to use things like that, you do need to think about it and stick to it. So Coolors, again, is a great resource for your colors. Google Fonts, again, for your fonts. And this is a screenshot I took from Envato Elements of one of their puzzle tools, or puzzle downloadable. So you can download pre-formatted sets of content like this, and you can see here there's what, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 slides in one go. And if you just edited those into the correct fonts and colors for your brand, that is a series of posts pre-ready for you to go, only for you to overlay the information. So it's these kind of things that you can think about in terms of productivity, in terms of actually getting yourself off the ground more so than anything, in terms of actually creating content that looks great. Because if you don't have a graphic designer to hand, it can be quite difficult to create really visually appealing content, because that is what Instagram is all about. It's all about delivering highly visual content that resonates with people. And if you don't have that skill set to hand, you can quite literally download that skill set for yourself to make life so much easier. And it's only a matter of overlaying the information that you want then from your idea to place in that post then. So the first thing I always say to people is start with a content calendar. This is probably quite a painful part of the process, if I'm completely honest, because it seems tedious and it seems like sometimes it's just difficult to plan content in advance. But for this, you can use a simple spreadsheet or a project management tool like Trello or Asana, and you can use this for across social media, not just for Instagram. Here's just a quick example of our internal planner here in Growth University. We use Notion. We just have a little tabs across like this, and what we do is we pop ideas into our ideas bar. When they're in progress, then someone pulls them out. So it depends. And ideas can be anything. It might be for Craig to write a blog. It might be for me to go do a video. Anyone can on the team can take that idea and move it into the progress bar, and then they can pull it into whether they've created graphic content, video content, a tweet or a blog, or have pulled something from in the news around it. And then someone can post it to social media over here. So we have this kind of flow where the team, and this works for us, and there's lots of, it'll work differently for every type of business. But we like this, I suppose, because of the idea bar, in the sense that, like, when people have ideas, like out and about, I can go, oh, light bulb, and just type it into the idea bar in Notion. And then whenever anyone has a chance to start getting into the creative mode, then, because the creative mode is actually almost a mindset you need to be in. It's very difficult to say, I'm going to sit down at 2 o'clock today and start creating content, because that's not how our minds work typically. It's not really how we can be highly productive now, unless you're in the creative field to begin with. I mean, if you're a graphic designer or you're in that field and that is your entire role, then it becomes a lot easier. But even as a marketer myself, even though I have to dig into that creativity a lot, actually a lot of my job is around numbers and looking at strategy and plan. So my mind isn't in creative mode all the time. And sometimes ideas just come to you from anything from watching a TV program to just being out and about. I find driving in the car, it happened all the time, which is a pain, because that's the only place where you can't actually take your hands off the wheel to write those ideas down. So I need to find a way of doing that for sure. But you get the idea anyway. Just start jotting down those ideas. Planning in advance is really important. It can be really consuming to think, but it will allow you that kind of, to get into that frame of mind to just really think about your audience a lot more as well. It'll also allow you to take into consideration things like hallmark days. So like if particular things really need to align with your audience. So say, for example, if it was Mother's Day or something, or Father's Day or something like that, and you sold something that would particularly resonate with that audience as a gift, or something else, that you can kind of take those into consideration in advance as well, and really just plan for those to happen. And also, if you want to keep your aesthetic strong, it's also a key step to be planning that, because you need to see what that's going to look like over time as well. It's not so much about the ideas and planning all your ideas into a space, but it's about going, well, how is that going to look like in a grid? How's it going to look in the feed? If you remember the presentation last week, I went through the different sizes and constraints you have for different types of content on the platform. And if you really need to think about your aesthetic, you need to plan into that as well, in terms of, okay, well, is this going to be an IGTV? Is it going to be a reel? Is it going to be a photo? Is it going to be a carousel? And so you need to think about that in terms of how you're going to integrate the aesthetic into that, and just think about that over time as well when you're in this planning phase. You also want to plan your relevant hashtags. So hashtagging is a hugely important part of Instagram, because it allows you get so much more reach than if you were not using them, essentially. So when it comes to hashtags, you're trying to maximize your reach beyond your audience, essentially. So you need to make lists of them, essentially. So actually, in my notes app on my phone is where I keep my lists, and I could do an entire course on hashtags alone, because they are so time consuming. It has taken me nearly 8 months to get my hashtag lists working well for me, in terms of researching, testing every single day as much as possible. Now, when you look at hashtags on Instagram, what you'll notice is that when you search for a hashtag, it might say 1 million posts, or you might search a very niche hashtag and it might say there's only been 5,000 posts on this. What happens when you use a very highly saturated hashtag is you're immediately demoted, almost not demoted, but there's so many people posting with that hashtag with such a high frequency that by the time you even hit post, so many other people have hit post with you that you're saturated in the hashtag. You drop down in that search so quickly. Now, the only way to claw your way back up in that instance is if you have a hugely engaged audience. Instagram will start noting that and start rising that post back up again. But that's a difficult game to play, especially if you're a new account. What you really want to be thinking about, especially if you're an earlier account, is those medium and low saturation hashtags. Maybe they have below 100,000 posts so far. Maybe they have even less than 10,000. What we would see here in Ireland, and I'm conscious that we have a much smaller population, but hashtag regional place, we'll say like hashtag Tralee or hashtag Cork. These places, like, people search for those a lot. Hashtag Cork business is a huge one here. And by huge, I mean most businesses use it and interact with each other on it in the Cork region in the south of Ireland. But if you went searching for that hashtag, it would say like maybe 10,000 posts or something, very small in comparison to the much broader hashtags. But because it's small and it's relevant, it's really important. So a great way to look for these hashtags is this website called Display Purposes. And I'm just going to give you a quick insight into that here. So this is Display Purposes. And what you can do here is essentially put in a keyword like digital marketing, and it will bring back the 30 most relevant hashtags it feels that is relevant for you. Now, this is a system that is not without its limitations, in the sense that you do need to read through them and say to yourself, well, are all of these relevant? And you also get these nice little indicators down along here about how relevant it is to the keyword you put in and how popular that hashtag is. But typically, I usually ignore these, and I end up going over to the Instagram platform itself, searching for these different hashtags and checking what is happening there. Like, if you look at the digital marketing hashtag, for example, on Instagram, it is heavily spammed, heavily saturated with the most random, irrelevant content to digital marketing. People just use the hashtag incorrectly a lot. But if someone is using, say, digital marketing strategy, in here, digital marketing strategy, and said, you can see here, even all of a sudden, these hashtags look a lot more relevant. Digital marketing tips, digital marketing agency, digital marketing expert. They're becoming more niche. So you can really use this tool to strategize around your hashtags. Now, the other thing that you can use this for as well is you can actually put someone's Instagram username in here and scan their profile, and it will spit back at you the hashtags that are the highest performing for that account. So if there's influencers in your space, if there's competitors in your space, and they're already kind of, you know, guns blazing, they're on the road to success on Instagram, you can start picking up some of that from them by having a look at how they're doing that through their hashtags as well. Another tip when it comes to hashtags is that I've noticed that the more a post is saved, not liked, commented on, but that save button in the corner, the more people who save that, it seems to really have a positive correlation with the hashtags. That is just trial and testing myself, something I've noticed, and I've seen some other marketers talk about it. But like that, a lot of these things sometimes can be a little bit speculative, because we're trialing and testing, and Instagram aren't exactly overly forthcoming in terms of how much information they put out around what actually correlates, what actually happens here. And the other thing that's really interesting about this hashtag platform is that it has this map option too. So you can zoom in. I'm going to zoom in here on the US. I'm just really surprised at how fast I found Washington, if I'm totally honest here. But as you zoom in, you can see what hashtags people are using in the area at a given time. So if you have something like an event or something that is happening that is like regionally specific, you can look at this. When COVID passes and we're all on our holidays again, I actually love to use this to see what's happening in a local area. If I'm on holidays or something like that, if something cool is going on, you can find that out pretty quickly in here as well. So it certainly has other benefits. They also have this graph option as well, so you can put in a keyword like digital again, and it'll give you like this kind of more visual insight into what other people kind of do, what other posts they've had with some with hashtags. This can be a little bit messier because some people might not just post about marketing, they might post about lots of different things. Like you can see over here, there's like list building, web marketing, sales funnel. My I don't know what this is, but you can see here that some of them end up being a little bit outside the remit, but it's still a very good way to do some research around it for yourself. I always reflect back on the platform itself and search for those hashtags internally on the platform to really try to dig into that and find out more. So there's a lot that you can get out of this website. So certainly check it out. The next thing I get asked about a lot when it comes to the platform is, does timing matter? And in short, it's not as much as you think, because actually people are on Instagram all of the time, all the time. This is a chart from Sprout Social that shows the global engagement on Instagram. And what you can see here is actually like the time I would never have guessed. 11 o'clock on a Wednesday is actually very, very good. I don't know if people just look at it at that time, but great in a B2B context. Friday as well. Now, typically what you see here in Ireland and the UK and the US and Canada, most English speaking countries for the most part, typically that 7 p.m. slot is what's considered golden hour on the platform. For most people, when you go into your insights, what you will notice is that there's a much higher amount of people online at 7 p.m. Now, what happens at 7 p.m. is, because everyone knows that, and that is kind of the golden hour that is sprouted by a vast majority of marketers, is that it's so saturated. You're better off actually posting at probably 6 or 8 to get out of that bubble. If you go onto your Instagram account at 7 p.m, I could guarantee you that you will see a ton of people live, for one thing. Another little trick that I love about trying to get your timing right is, if you go into the app and you open an Instagram live as if you're about to go live, what pops up in your screen is the amount of people in your follower list who are online right now. So you don't need to go live, but you can just open it to see how many of your followers are actually live on the platform right now. And that's a great way of just kind of going, oh, now would be a good time to post. There's at least 50 or 60 or 100 or 200 people online. My post is going to go to the top, and you can actually see the names of the people as well, which is good. So if you're a smaller business and you know that, say, these 5 people are, there's these people that are kind of good for liking your posts or regularly engage with you, you can see if they're online, and that can help lift things, especially when we're talking about that 0 to 1 stage, the very early users. So you can think about using it like that as well. Location settings are actually really important as well. Now, HubSpot say that posts with a location setting optimized perform 79% better than those without on average in 2020. For me, I don't know if it's because most of the account work that I do on Instagram is in Ireland, but I firmly believe that 79% is way too high a figure here. It doesn't strike me as accurate. But what I will say is that nonetheless, I think the location element of this is extremely important, because just as much as people can search for a hashtag, they can also search for a location. Now, I find it I have 2 Instagram accounts. One is heavily on the kind of landscape and photography, as you can see here, and adding a location to that is going to be far more important than me adding the location on my marketing content as such. But equally, as a business, there's no harm in adding a location, but just bear it in mind that it does seem to have some relevance in the improvement of your posts. You can add a location that you're not in as well. When you click add location, you can type in any location. It doesn't just force you to add the location of where you are. So just bear that in mind as well. Also, longer captions and planning for those as well is key. So the longer the caption, the better. You can see here how it has started to impact engagement. So those engagement rates have started going up, especially over the years, first of all. And you can see here by the caption length. You'd be surprised by what the actual length is. I can't remember, maybe it's the actual 1,000, but I thought it was 1,200 for some reason in my head there. But use that space if you can. Now, it's better still to just post your piece of content and write a short caption as opposed to not posting at all if you can't think of a longer caption or you haven't prepped a longer caption. But it's still worth thinking about writing longer pieces of content. It's interesting. It's a really interesting part of the platform, I guess, because it's so highly visual that you wouldn't really expect the caption to hold so much weight in comparison to say the same post without a longer caption. But people do actually tend to spend time reading those things. The other thing that this feeds into that I was talking about before with the carousel posts is that dwell time. People, if you have a longer caption and people are reading it, they are naturally actually spending quite a lot of time on that post. They're spending time reading it, and that accumulates essentially into the post getting more reach over time. So in order of preference, I always say like the save button is like a golden like. It's like a double like. It's very high value. Then you're looking at your comments, your likes, and then you're looking at dwell time. Well, the algorithm's looking at it, I suppose. And all of those factored together is what helps Instagram determine if your post is going to be seen again, if it's going to be seen again, if they're how many feeds are they placing this in, how many people are going to reach this, what is the relevancy for different people, and so they take all these things into consideration to assess that. So a longer caption can give you that added benefit of just getting more dwell time if you're getting no other form of engagement on that post. You want to measure your engagement rates as well, and your insights. You can find the engagement rate for a post by dividing the total number of likes, comments by the total number of followers. So you can look at your reactions, comments, and saves, add those together, and divide it by your follower number and multiply that by 100 to get your engagement rate. This is kind of I suppose, a loose figure to go by. It certainly helps you decipher over time if things are getting better, but it doesn't factor in things like if you've gotten a golden pile of hashtags that have extended your reach far beyond your follower count and you've gotten engagement from there. In that scenario, you can see how this can become inaccurate, but it's still a good way to just start measuring it, if nothing else. I had a post a few months back where I'd finally started getting my hashtags going. I think on the account at the time it was about 700 or 800 followers, and the post had reached about 1,600 because of the hashtags I was using. So I was actually managing to hit double the amount of people by just really leveraging hashtags accurately. So it's really important to look at that side of things. But when you're looking at it in correlation with the standard rate, the standard way of measuring engagement, it can become a little bit skewed. So it's worth being wary of that and kind of acknowledging that maybe an engagement rate was particularly high and acknowledging that your hashtags performed really well in that instance. But also that's a learning too, to say I can take that set of hashtags and grow from it. I can learn from it. I can try figure out which ones are the best. A little tip, side tip on the hashtag side of things as well is sometimes people ask me, is it better to put them in the post or to put them in the comments? And you can do either or, but and the comments, I like to put them in the comments myself only for aesthetics, because the comment collapses and you don't have this big long string of hashtags at the end of a caption, especially if you've written a longer one. But what you can also get from that is if you put them in the post and you hit the promote button and you go through the process of the promote button, it just gives you 4 or 5 steps to follow. It's very easy. And then if you come back out and hit your insights button, it will give you a breakdown of all the hashtags and their performance, and you can go in and cancel the promotion again. It just seems to be the only way to trick Instagram into giving you that information about the hashtags. If you just use hashtags and click on your insights, it will just accumulate them all into the word hashtag. It'll say hashtag performance 100 reach or 1,000 reach or whatever it was. But if you click that promote button, just delete the promotion straight after you do it. But if you hit promote, go through the process and then hit insights straight away, you'll get a breakdown of the hashtags. So you'll be able to see actually which hashtags are performing best, because if you're using 30 of them and it's giving you a cumulative data, it's very difficult to know which one was doing the work for you. I found that trick really handy, because what I've done is that over the space of 70 or 80 posts, trying different hashtags, I've been able to pin out the best one from each one and test them as like a group of 30 very strong hashtags. Then 30 is the maximum you can use. So I always say to people, use the full 30 if you're in testing mode. But once you start getting into the nitty gritty and you're like, well, these 10 or these 11 are just really high performing, you don't need to go to that full 30 anymore once you start really figuring it out. But it certainly takes a lot of time to figure that out. And the platform is always changing. There's always new hashtags. There's always things, trends that people jump on and things like that. So certainly worth bearing that in mind as well. But just keep an eye on it, because it really helps with growth. There's also tons of content planning tools out there, and there is a lot of arguments to be had over third-party tools versus Facebook Creator Studio. So when you're planning your content, or if you're scheduling content, there are tons of third-party tools available to you, and there's also Facebook's as Facebook owned Instagram, Facebook's internal tool called Facebook Creator Studio. Marketers will often argue that third-party tools can diminish your reach because of it being a third party and outside of the Facebook ecosystem, and because they have their own version that they would prefer people to use. For me, I think if you're using a third-party tool and it's helping you in terms of productivity and it's helping you get content out and it's making life so much easier and the content is good and the content is resonating, the third-party tool impact isn't as noticeable, I guess, and it's very easy one to default to. You know, you might be creating content for 6 weeks and saying, it was the third-party tool I used that made it do nothing for me, when actually you probably would have done okay if the content was better. So sometimes you might need to reflect on the content more so than the tool. But that being said, do your research if you're using a third-party tool. See if people are kind of talking about a diminished reach from that tool. It seems to be different from platform to platform in terms of third-party. For example, Later Media is a huge one. Massive accounts use it on the regular, so it can't be that bad. But at the same time, some people would argue, well, they already have such a huge audience that isn't going to impact in terms of that. So I would say to a smaller or new account, just if you can at all, play it safe and use Facebook Creator Studio at least, just to minimize that risk at least, because you know yourself, Facebook doesn't like third party anything. If you put up a post on Facebook and try link it to another website, you're definitely not going to reach very many people at all. They will just push that right to the bottom. So it's to the same line of thought as that, really. Here are some examples of third-party tools for scheduling. Later, Canva has a built-in tool now as well. When I last checked this, they were still in the process of getting the Instagram API integration sorted, but they should have it soon, if not already. So I would check that out. But you can create your piece of content and just hit schedule straight away from the platform, which is very good when it comes to Canva. Planoly is it's actually a very nice platform to use. I have the app on my phone, and what I find is that I use it sometimes to map content visually, because you can schedule in all your posts and it will give you like a sample feed of what that will look like, and you can just drag and drop them and move them around so that you can look at your aesthetic more visually from that perspective. So Planoly is a good one if you are more visual in how you're creating content, because it can be difficult to create for a visual platform on a spreadsheet. Sometimes you just need to be looking at what's actually happening. There's also types of content you can and can't schedule. So with carousels, yes, you can. You definitely can in Facebook Creator Studio. Also, it's worth noting that some third-party tools are yes to some and no to others. But as a general rule, carousels are okay across the board. Static images are okay. Stories, there is no API integration as far as I'm aware to schedule stories. You can't schedule them. What happens is that when you schedule on a third party app, it just pings you on your phone. It says reminder to hit post on your story, and you have to manually go in and hit post. It can't schedule and do that automatically for you. I did a quick search earlier this morning to actually double check that this hadn't changed, and I saw one or two pop up saying that they could do it, but as I hadn't tested them, I'm going to assume that it's actually just a scheduled reminder again, because for the vast majority of them, it's not the case. Videos, yes. IGTV, you absolutely can, at least in Facebook Creator Studio. Some of the third-party platforms won't let you do that. Reels, yes, but not in all tools. Facebook Creator Studio won't let you do it. And there is one called Preview App that seems to have a solution here, but it's very new, so keep an eye on that. And Instagram Live, you just have to go live natively on the platform. There is ways to integrate it with some of the live streaming tools, but it's a complex setup for most beginners. And they are planning a rollout that I mentioned last week in terms of integrating it so that you can go live across platforms. This is what the Facebook Creator Studio looks like on the inside. I've just blurred out the name of someone here, but as you can see, these are pieces of content that were planned up until that were posted up until today. You can see this isn't scheduled out in this instance. It's showing you past data, but you can use the calendar to schedule out posts. You can look at your insights. If you've got brand partners and you're monetizing accounts in any way, shape, or form, if anything is bigger, or in terms of influencer marketing, you can look at the monetization side, and you can also add multiple Instagram accounts in here. So if you are a user who has multiple accounts or multiple businesses that you're looking after, you can add all of them in here. And same, you can see here it has two little tabs here on the top, Facebook and Instagram, so you can use this across both platforms. Some of the other third-party tools, like there's more common ones as well, like Hootsuite and things like that, where you can use it to do all of your social media. So it depends on what you're looking at. If you're really focusing in on Instagram, I'd be saying, look, use this, especially if you're new. But if the productivity falls back on, well, I need to be able to schedule across several other platforms as well, you need to start looking at the Hootsuites of the world and things like that. But try to use some of the longer standing third-party tools that are quite familiar names, or names you've heard of before, because they clearly need to build up a little bit of trust with the platform, I feel, over time. So just bear that in mind as well. So this is planning in a more visual way. This is Planoly, as I was mentioning earlier here. You can see here, you can just draft, plan, schedule, measure, and monetize and publish, and all of that you can discover and like analyze your metrics and things. But they have a nice calendar layout as well that you can use to kind of visualize what's happening, and also retrospectively look at what has happened too. And when it comes to the creativity side, I mean, productivity around creativity is very, very difficult. These are the three resources that I use to try get ideas. One is I'll just follow hashtags, and I'll just look at my explore page, and I will just try to find content. As you can see here, my looking at the digital marketing strategy, I can see lots of different ideas here off the bat. Answerthepublic.com is an amazing resource. I love this. You put in a word, and it will give you back a ton of visual data, like they're almost like spider webs almost off of that keyword. They will give you different questions that people search. This is actually typically what a lot of people use for blogs, but I still use it for ideas for Instagram or for other platforms as well. The caveat with it, I guess, is that you only get like 2 searches a day. So just be careful with your search terms. They have a premium plan, but it's like $80 a month or something like that. So it's an expensive platform, but they do give you a few searches a day. If you are tech savvy, just change your VPN and you can search all day long. So that's how it works off of. So I spend a lot of my time changing my VPN to not pay $80 a month. So That's how you can get around that on Answer the Public. The third one over here on the right is Feedly. Feedly, you can download the app to your phone. It's fantastic. What you can do is create these little feeds in the corner. This is my marketing feed. So when I wake up, I can see the top stories. I can see what's happening in the industry. You can make these boards for literally anything, and you can feed in almost any news resource in the world. I've never found Irish news on another platform that is global. So when I was able to find the local news sources here, I was like, okay, they really do cover everything. So you can just, and it'll give you recommendations as well. When you type in a topic, it'll say, well, these are the best resources that other people have found helpful. So it's a great way to just get through finding relevant content in your niche, what people are talking about. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in, because this will cover nearly everything, especially if you're B2B. If you're B2C, it will still give you topical insight into what is happening in the world. So for example, if you're a fashion brand, or if you're a makeup brand or something like that, you'd be following a lot of influencer news or kind of industry news and that. So you can still kind of get a lot out of it, even if you're B2C. The one thing I love here as well about Answer the Public is these are like the most frequently asked questions into Google almost. So you're looking at actual visual data that people regularly search or query around your industry. So sometimes I'll put in something like Facebook ads, and it will say, you know, how to set up Facebook Pixel, how do I start with Facebook ads, how do I do, and it'll go through all of the different questions, like the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and it will give you the list of all those different questions that people ask. So it's a really good sounding board, because what people are searching is kind of like the highest intent off of someone in terms of what they're looking for in your industry. And always just write. Jotting down your ideas when you have them for later is absolutely key. It can be really difficult to just sit down and be creative. I always say this. I'm the type of person who just has paper everywhere, but I need to start putting everything in one notebook for sure. But I just try to write down as much as possible. This is actually a really handy tool. I bought some of these. They're called Aqua Notes, and you can stick them in the shower and you get a waterproof pencil and paper. I don't know why I just always have ideas in the shower. I can never write them down, much like when I'm driving. So this is a really handy little tip. I think a lot of people end up in that scenario. And then you want to action your ideas in bulk. So I'd be saying, have your ideas, jot them down, then in one go start creating them. When you're in that kind of creative mindset, start going through those ideas and just start creating content around it. Then you're looking at your calendar, when am I going to post that, and then post it. And then from there on Instagram, you're monitoring, and then you're going back to the idea phase from that again. So I love this kind of Instagram success loop is what I call it. So you have your idea, you jot it down, you create it, put it into your calendar, post it, look at the results, and the results kind of can feed back into your ideas then again. So you can say, well, this, and this doesn't work. So next time I have an idea that is in these three spaces, I can just scrap it off the bat. Whereas if I have an idea around something that is performing much better, I can feed that back into my ideas again. And it's just a cycle of creativity, because it does feel never ending, because you're trying, especially if you're posting every day, you're actually trying to come up with 30 pieces of content a month. I've worked on accounts where they're trying to push out 2-3 pieces of content plus like 10-12 stories. That's a significant amount of content. You just have to keep churning through this loop to get that out all of the time, and it can be really, really, really time consuming. There's also tools to help monitor your success on a platform. So the Instagram Insights is the most basic one. You can go in and it will just, over here on the left, and I went back one. So over here on the left, you can just go in, you can look at your reach and all of that I showed you, that I told you to screen grab in week 1, so that you can get your baseline figures. But if you use like Hootsuite or Iconosquare, they also give you lots of insights. And actually, some of these platforms will give you insights that Instagram won't. So say, for example, if you're monitoring a large account on Hootsuite, you can get insight into things like comment sentiment, or these kind of more, I don't want to say ambiguous, but more kind of qualitative insight into your accounts as well. So some of these can be good if you're looking for kind of metrics that aren't exactly okay. You reached 1,000 people. It's more like can I gauge more how people are feeling about my content? Can I gauge more of that side of things that it's hard to quantify, but it will give you some information around that. That is an important part of the platform as well. Trial and error is absolutely key on the platform as well. If a piece of content is falls flat, it can be disheartening because I mean you've looking at the cycle, you've put in a lot of time and effort into every single post, and like you just have to take that away as a learning experience for the next piece of content. And the real key to success here is just that consistency and that learning as you go. You want to kind of think of Instagram always as this continuous like process of improvement, continuous improvement process, really, so that you can really get the most out of the platform. I mean, if I look at, say, the photography account I've been working on since 2000 and maybe 12 or something now at this stage, there's nearly 10 years of posts on it. But when I scroll back 5 years ago, they're awful. Well, they look awful now. But I think when you reflect back and you start looking at your older content over time, if you feel your older content was crap, it just means you've gotten better. So you don't need to kind of worry about it anymore. If you're just getting better at it, then it doesn't matter what's behind you there on the platform. Before I jump into the homework there as well, I just want to show you quickly on Canva over here, and this is really helpful. But if you go to canva.com and if you have a premium account, you can use the brand kit as well. So you can upload colors. These are internal use colors and some from some clients I've worked on. I can also upload their specific fonts in here as well. So if they're not on Canva, I can just upload that font after downloading it from fonts.google.com, or maybe a designer has handed over the font in some instances. But then when you actually go in to design a post, so I'm just going to pick a template here at random. I'll just go with this one. So what I can do then is once I hit the colors, you can see here the brand kit has come up. So I can immediately change these to be perfectly on brand. And I can make sure that the fonts are on brand too. As soon as you click the fonts and you click the drop down for your fonts, you can see here brand fonts. They're taking a second to load, but they just list themselves here as well. And yeah, there we go. So you can see uploaded fonts and brand fonts. So I can just correct them to the right things, and then I have a post that is on brand within seconds. So it's really good to be able to use the templates, but also to be able to manipulate them straight into your brand identity as much as possible. In this instance, the color scheme, the business that uses this color scheme actually tries to avoid circular shapes. So in this instance, it's not ideal, but you can see very quickly how you can get the most out of these by just changing them to the correct color scheme and the correct fonts for yourself. And it's a very quick and easy way to navigate that process there as well. So last week, in terms of homework, we focused on thinking about your consistency, thinking about what that was going to look like in terms of your actual resources to put onto the platform. So this week, start thinking about the actual content. So if you're planning 2 posts per week, plan what those 2 pieces of content are going to be and create them. Have a look at that, just getting into that loop of creating content, and assess those results, post them, assess the results, and determine to start experimenting more or create more similar content. So you're always going to have to take that away. Are you going to start experimenting more? Is it not working? Do you need to do a ton of things? Like, for example, the 70 or 80 posts I did with different hashtags to just experiment the hashtags. That was all I was focused on. I was trying to make good enough content to say that, okay, it was good enough content for the hashtags to for it to resonate within the hashtag, but at the same time that was my core focus. So if your core focus at the start is to find out what kind of messaging is working, to find out what kind of visuals are working, just keep experimenting because that'll pay off over time as well. Or if you find you've suddenly, every time you feel like you've hit that golden nugget, start leaning into it, create more similar content to that, but you can always have your outlier experimental content as well. So I'm going to leave that here for this week.